Yeah, good morning, guys. Joined it. Okay. So in the last class, we discussed about different types of parameterization, all correlation things, right? Now we'll move to the different types of controllers. Before we move to the advanced level, we need to learn what are the types of controllers we got. Let me open this. So normally we have seen only transaction controller, right? Transaction controller just like giving a name or transaction or just like a folder content, right? Within the transaction, we'll have the request or a sampler. So when you run each business, yeah. So each transaction, you can make it as a transaction controller. This is just for giving a name for your action. But in JMeter, if I want to implement any logic, like instead of writing any code, we can use these controllers for implementing any logic. Okay, so this is very important. So you'll get in the interview, definitely they'll ask you about what all the controllers you have used in your JMeter test. Okay, we'll start with the simpler one, like transaction controller, and there is something called simple controller. Yeah, simple controller and a recording controller. They don't have any logic. Yeah, recording controller. Okay. So these are all just like if I want to use this as a folder, you can use this as a folder, simple controller or recording controller. The recording controller, normally you'll use it when here. Yeah, when we are creating the script, then you can use a recording controller, like, use recording controller. So, right. So I don't want to, create a transaction wise. So if I put some recording controller, okay, and whatever the actions you record, all those things will be recorded under recording controller. Instead of if I don't want to change the transaction names, okay. right? You can use the recording control is only used for recording. Okay. And a simple controller, just like a folder, it will not work as a transaction controller. Difference between transaction and simple is, say, for example, when you run any, you can see in the view results tree, you can see only the transaction controller. Let us say we'll have some requests here. So when you run, you will see, you don't see the transaction name for simple controller and recording controller. For these two, directly it will display the request under this. So why you need to use? Because if I just want to use as a what I will say, as a simple folder, then you can use this simple controller. Recording controller, at the time of creating the script, you can use. Okay, these are all the simple controllers which have not much logic here. Only the transaction controller will use at the time of recording for for splitting our script into some transaction names. That's how we recorded flight booking, right? Now there is a type of controller. Say for example, yeah. Let me remove all this. There is a requirement. Okay. Now let us come back to our script. Let me copy our. This is our flight booking, right? So here, what is happening? Every time you run, let me remove this. Right? You have launch, find flights, and choose, click purchase, and go back home. Now your client says that. So if I'm running this for, let us say, 5 times. So all the 5 times, all the five transaction will be repeated, right? But let us assume a scenario wherein you are working on any retail application like Amazon. So here you have multiple scenarios. Let's say user will log in. First, you launch the application, right? Launch. You launch the application, and then you log into the application. After login, you search for a product. Let us say searching for a product, and then add to cart, select, add to cart. These are all one scenario. But every time you run, client says that you don't need to launch login every time. Again, you don't need to repeat. Already you logged in, you're completed, right? Second time, why do you again log in? You're already logged in. From the second time onwards, it should work only from search. After that, selecting the product and add to cart. These actions should be only repeated. This launching the application and login should be run only once. I don't want to repeat again, right? Second time again, user will not log in. Already you logged in. From second time onwards, you just should run from the searching the product, select, and payment. So in real time, your client will ask you to not to repeat launch multiple times. Only one times it should run. How do you do? The same thing here also. You are launching the application, then finding flights, choose. Here, what client want is from the second iteration as launch should not be repeated. It should be repeated only once because you're already logged in. You should repeat from find flights to purchase. Okay, so this, how will you implement this logic instead of writing in a single piece of code? How do you implement this? For this, we have a simple controller called once only controller. Okay, so if I put this once only controller, this entire transaction I am putting under once only controller. Right now, when you run, launch is executed. Now go back home from second time onwards. Again, direct it is using find flights. Go back home. After that, again find flights. Go back home. Then again from find flights to go back home. Find flights to go back home. That means what? This particular action or this transaction is executed only once. That is called once only controller. Okay. So I where real time where we will use normally when I want to use for this launch login section. Okay. So user will log in only once and repeat the other transaction multiple times. So in the future also we'll use this for implementing any logic, or if they want this product should be executed only once, or add to cart, or any particular transaction they want to run only once. From second time onwards they don't want to run. So instead of putting some if condition loops or number of lines, simply we'll use this once only controller. Okay, say I have another requirement. Once only controller is used for what? To execute only once. Now I want to run this particular transaction continuously for some particular time. So this search loop should be executed for continuously 5 minutes. So it is a requirement for the from the client. So you run when you run your script, this search transaction should be continuously repeated for some number of times. Let us say I want to repeat this for number of times, like 10 times. Say for example, here if I give iteration 5 means what? All the what I would say, all the transactions are, let me put it here, iteration number, right? All the transaction will run for those many iteration number. Now you can see I want only this find flights should be executed continuously for 10 times. If I say iteration means it is applicable for all the transactions, right? Right, which way? I don't want to run all the transaction for number of times. only this particular transaction should run for 10 times. How do you do that? Again, instead of writing any code or something, we can implement this by using loop controller. So I want whatever you want to repeat, like that transaction, you'll put it under loop controller. Here I'll give the number. Let's say 10. First iteration only this particular thing will run for a 15 times. After that only next request will be executed. You can see this will be executed for 15 times, or whatever the number you have given. You have given 10. This will be executed for the 10 times. After that only the next things are executed. You can see. Right. So if I want only one particular transaction or action should be repeated for number of times, then what can I use? You can use loop controller. If you want entire screen to be repeated, anyway, you can use this iteration, right? But I don't want the entire, only one particular thing should be repeated for 10 times. Then you can put this. If I select this infinite, what happens? Remove the iterations, then we'll see the better. See, instead of putting some number, if I select infinite, what happens? This will be executed in an infinite loop. There is no ending. But why they have given this infinite? So if I put this infinite, it will not stop or not go to the next transaction. It will run in an infinite loop. Okay. So if I stop it, then only it will stop. Otherwise, it will run in an infinite loop. But where you can use this infinite, if I just want to run 5 times, it will run 5 times. But if I put infinite, it will continuously run until unless your test is stopped. Okay, here if I put the time duration, like uh, 60 seconds. So after 60 seconds, the thread group will be stopped, then automatically that will be stopped. So here I say this as infinite, specify the thread time as 60 seconds. Now this is running for infinite loop, right? If you see after 60 seconds, this will end. If I don't want any particular number, I want to run it continuously, you can run. But where exactly we'll have this requirement in running the loop for infinite? First, let me see after about 60 seconds, will it stop or not? Yeah, the test is stop, but it is not going to the next this thing. Only this search only is repeated in a loop. Say, for example, I want to pass the test data without running the test data, executing the test. I want to evaluate the test data. Like I want to pass all the values of the test data, and I want to make sure that all the values are utilized. Say, let us add our config element. Which one? We have one config element, right? Test data. Yeah, this is a test data we got, right? And here we are passing the same test data. So let me just stop this. Is it passing the data or not? Let us cross check. Yes, pass data is passing. Okay. Yeah. Let me run this for only one iteration only. Right. Now here, what I want to do here is I want to execute all the records of test data. Like this is our Excel sheet, right? CSV. This is our Excel file, right? So how many records we got? Around, like let's say 200 records. Okay. Now I don't know how many number of records are there. We don't know. But someone will give you test data like hundreds of records, thousands of records. They want you to evaluate all the test data. I want you to pass all the records and check whether the all the records are properly working or not. So in that case, how do I make sure that I'll pass all the records through my screen and make sure all the records are passed without running the test for a particular time or executing the entire test? How can I make sure for that? What I'll do is, this is our purchase, right? Here you're passing the test data. I'll declare one loop controller and this one I'll put under loop. Yeah. So, sorry, I put this purchase under loop controller, okay? Now, if I put this as an infinite, what happens? This will run for continuously until unless I stop it. What I'll do is this CSV config element I'll put under this loop element. Understood? Instead of putting here, I put this CSV data set under the loop element. So here I'll make a little bit changes like, here recycle on end of the file. That means once the data is completed, again, this should be running from the beginning. This I'll make it as false. And stop thread on end of file, this I'll make it as true. Okay. And here I'll put as infinite. Now, if I run this, you'll see what happens. It will utilize all the records of test data. Once the records are completed, this will stop. The test will stop. Okay, this will make sure that your test is stopped. Let me. Normally, if I put on infinite, what happens? Infinite means it will continuously run in an infinite loop. Now, if I make these changes, now let me run this. Now, this is running in an infinite loop, you can see. Every time it is changing the test data. Now it will utilize all records of test data. Once it completes all 200 records, your test will be stopped. This is a real time where you'll use the loop controller. If you just want to only run for 5 times or 6 times, you can put number. But infinite, where you'll use for validating your test data. This is not iteration. This is what? Loop. Now you can see. After completion of last record, the test will be stopped. Janice Parker. I think that is the last. You can see here. For validating of test data, we can use this. Janice, last record. After executing all the test data, it is stopped. Okay, so in this real-time situation, we'll use loop control as infinite. Otherwise, if you want to run only 5 times, 10 times, then you can run it. This is for loop control. Okay, so let us say I have another requirement. Instead of running this for a number of times or infinite, I have a requirement. Let me put this back. I want to run a particular like search flight or something continuously for some period of time, not like number of times. I don't want to run for certain number of times, but I want to run this for particular duration. Instead of running for 10 times or 20 times or infinite, I want to run a particular action transaction for continuously for 30 seconds. Okay, after 30 seconds only, it should go to the next transaction. That is my requirement here. Normally, it should start, and when it comes to this fine flights, this should be executed continuously for a particular time period, like 30 seconds. So, how do you implement that logic? So, you need to first capture time and put that in a loop. If the time is 30 seconds, then only it should stop, right? So, instead of writing all these codes or logics, simply we can use one controller. Logical controller. I have a runtime controller. Okay. I put this transaction under, sorry, runtime controller, not run. Yeah. Runtime controller. Here we'll mention like number of seconds. I want to run this continuously for 30 seconds or 1 minute. After 1 minute only, it should run the next transaction. User should log in. After that, it should keep on searching for 1 minute. After that only, it should go to the next step, then purchase and go back. Let us say this is the requirement. Then I can put that under runtime controller and put the time here. Now you can see this will run for continuously 1 minute. After 1 minute only, it will go to the next transaction. See, after 1 minute, completion of 1 minute, it is executed the third, fourth, and fifth. So based on your requirement, you can use your controller, whatever the controller, right? Without writing a single code, we can use these controllers and implement the logic. Okay, next thing, let's, if I have a particular this thing, let's say here I want to say if I have multiple actions, right? Let's say, for example, I have four different requests. Let us say four different actions. Let us say. Let me put sampler. Sampler 3, sampler 4. So I have 4 different samplers or 4 different requests, we can say. Okay. Now my requirement here is I don't want to execute all the 4 at a time. Out of these 4, I want to execute any one request randomly. Okay. So let us say, let us in real time. This is a retail application, right? So you have, this is one transaction, right? This is one action. This is another one, and this is another one. Let us like these are all not dependent on anyone, right? Out of these, I want to run. Your client says that you don't need to run all the 4 actions. I want you to run any one randomly. Randomly, either you click this one or this one. So every iteration, it should pick the random one. Any one, like either this one. Maybe in the next iteration, it should pick either this one or this one. Right? All these we at the time of recording, for each of this, you'll put one transaction, right? So, but I don't want to execute uh, all these continuously. Any one randomly, but not in a serial order. Okay. Now, how do you execute randomly? So, what I'll do is normally at the time of recording, you'll put the transaction name as well, right? Let us say this is one transaction. Let us say this is click 1. Three, 4, let us say. Now we have 4 different actions, let us assume. Out of all these 4, every iteration it should pick only one randomly. That is also not in a serial. Okay, in a randomly, it should pick only one particular thing. For example, if you are running with multiple user 1 should pick anyone randomly. This one, user 2 should pick anyone randomly, like that. If I run with multiple each user should pick anyone randomly. That is my requirement here. Okay. So how do I implement that? We don't need this. Okay. Now, this also I don't know. Runtime controller. This for time period only. Now I want you to execute any of these. I will run with multiple users. Okay. Let us say 4 users or 5 users. Each user should pick anyone randomly. Let me put this. Let us say 5 actions, 5 different clicks. Now 5 different requests. Each click will have some request, right? Now I will run this with 5 users. Okay.